Returning back to the structure of Daniel 11:36 through 38 and continuing on with its explanation, notice the bottom left half's the desire of women. What is the desire of women? What is it talking about? Notice it says, not regard the desire of women. What was God's purpose in giving man the desire for women? It was for marriage, to bind a man to his wife. In talking of the desire of women, Daniel is here speaking of marriage. Some would disregard the desire of women, this God-given urge, drive, craving, ignoring it, treating it as trivial, and would forbid marriage. Now, what of the associated section on the right? We have just deciphered the left half, so let's move on to the right. How do you honor a god with gold, silver, precious stones, etc.? Recall the chiastic structure of Daniel 11, of which the yellow section is of interest to us, it being the part containing the verse we are attempting to decipher. Here is that section listing the words and phrases that have parallels in both halves. And here is our focus, verses 8 and 38. Precious, pleasant, precious things, silver and gold. Now for a detailed look at these two verses. What does Daniel 11:8 imply about verse 38? And a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things. Verse 38. And shall also carry captives into Egypt their gods, with their princes, and with their precious vessels of silver and of gold. Verse 8. Notice verse 38's a god is paralleled by gods in verse 8. A god, Eloah, and gods, Elohim. Verse 38's gold is paralleled by the same in verse 8. Verse 38's silver is paralleled by the same in verse 8. Verse 38's pleasant things is paralleled by precious in verse 8. But we knew all this before we started this in-depth look. So now for something new. Notice verse 38's princes. Strong number 5257. Hebrew, Nes'ik. Strong gives the following definition. Properly, something poured out, i.e., a libation. Also a molten image. By implication, a prince, as anointed, etc. So based on that definition, let's replace princes with molten images. Notice verse 38's vessels. Strong number 3627. Hebrew, Kel-i. Strong gives the following definition. Something prepared, that is, any apparatus, as an implement, utensil, dress, vessel, or weapon, etc. So based on that definition, let's replace vessels with objects. There's a point I'm trying to make. They're gods, they're molten images, and they're precious objects of silver and of gold. Could these all be talking about the same thing? Images? And if the theme of verse 8 is images, what does this imply about verse 38? Its theme is also images. That is, you honor a god with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things by making images, idols. Returning back to the structure of Daniel 11:36 through 38 and continuing on with its explanation. As we saw, you honor a god with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things, with idols made of these things. But what is the connection between marriage and idols? Recall that the parallel structure implies there is a connection between adjacent sections. So what is the connection? First, we need to look at creation, when man and marriage came into being, if we want to understand the connection. Recall that marriage is the image of God. Here is a visual representation. Returning back to the structure of Daniel 11:36-38 and continuing on with its explanation, we now see that marriage is really the image of God. In its most complete sense, only in Christianity when both husband and wife walk with the third member of their marriage, Jesus Christ, who is the center of the marriage. Now, what of idols? How does it connect to the image of God, marriage? The image of man, tselem. Thou hast also taken thy fair jewels, of my gold and of my silver, which I had given thee, and madest to thyself images of men, and didst commit whoredom with them. Ezekiel 16:17. Returning back to the structure of Daniel 11:36-38 and continuing on with its explanation, we now see that the connection between marriage and idols is fully flushed out. Marriage is the image of God, while idols are the image of man. Notice the Sabbath, as well as marriage. Both of these came out of creation, from God's perfect world prior to the fall. Thus the left half is not just dishonor God, but more specifically, dishonor the Creator. That ends our explanation of the structure of Daniel 11:36-38.